tea, but they just harvested the leaves from the trees, the bushes. They didn't prune them. They didn't grow them in a plantation. They collected the tea leaves in the wild. So now they're being asked to plant tea bushes 1 meter apart. And again, how are the tea bushes going to be able to sustain their growth year after year without getting some kind of food? So composting is a very simple system of using materials that are rich in nitrogen, like green leaves, grass cuttings, metica, those types of things, gobar, and some materials which are high in carbon. And those would include dry leaves, straw, that primarily those two sources. So when we're making a compost pile, we make layers that are maybe between 4 to 6 inches deep of each of those materials. So we're making like a layer cake. First, we would put on the bottom of the pile, we would put some branches to allow air to come into the pile. Because what you want to do is to feed the bacteria and the microorganisms, the earthworms, all of the tiny creatures that help break down the carbon materials like the leaves and the green materials into a form that the plants can absorb through their root system. Earthworms themselves don't have teeth, so they can't chew up materials like leaves and straw. So what we require is for bacteria, naturally occurring bacteria, to be introduced into the compost pile so that that bacteria can start to digest and break down the organisms. And certain types of fungus do that as well. So gobar and cow urine are really effective ingredients that can be used to basically, you mix those with water, make a slurry. And then when you make your layer of your green material, let's say some dried or some green leaves, and then you might put a layer of straw on. You want to moisten the straw. So you would use the slurry. Can be just a small bucket of gobar and a big pail of water, and mix it up really well so that the gobar is mixed well with the water. You can add some cow urine if you have access to it. And then just throw a bucket full of the water mixture onto the pile so that you're moistening the straw, and you're also introducing those beneficial bacteria that live in the gut of the cow. That's how the cow produces gobar. The bacteria that live in the gut of the cow help break down the grass and the straw and the hay and the leaves that the cow eats. So all we're really doing is introducing those beneficial microorganisms that live in the gut of the cow into a pile of organic material, giving them the environment they need by keeping it moist and keeping the rain out of it so it doesn't get too wet, and also covering it so that it doesn't get direct sun, because the microorganisms don't do well if they're exposed to sunlight. So going back to the system of creating the pile, in my garden, I have piles that are about 12 feet long. They're 3 feet or 1 meter wide, and they're at least 1 meter high. And in the spring, when I start working in my garden, I collect all the weeds from the garden, and I let a little bit of the soil come along with the weeds when I pull them out. I have some straw that I purchased from one of the local farms. I have piles of leaves that I've raked up in the fall. I have some kitchen waste, the peelings from my vegetables, leftover rice, things like that. And I layer it systematically till I get to that point where it's about 3 feet high. And I have to buy gobar because I don't have any cows here. I can use the chicken manure, and I have a couple of chickens right now. I don't have a big flock, but I carry, when I clean out the chicken house, I carry the straw with the chicken droppings in it, and I use that in my compost pile as well. So materials that are available, you know, banana stem is one of the best materials of all anywhere for making compost. So when there are festivals or marriages, and when people are cutting down the banana to mark as a column at the entrance to a marriage party or whatever, you can take those banana stems, use a dowel, and just cut the material into it's so soft, it's very easy to cut. And because you're cutting it very fine, that material decomposes quite quickly. So it's a really great material that's available. Another thing that we've used extensively in our training center in our garden in Digboy is Metica. And Metica, as you know, has started to invade a lot of natural waterways and ponds, and it's an invasive plant. So that can be harvested, and then again, using the dowel, cutting it into small pieces. If you just use the whole plant with the root connected to it, you can find over time, especially if in the summer months, as you're having now, when there's a lot of rain, the Metica can start growing in your compost pile. So you need to cut it up fairly fine. But there are so many materials. You know, one of the things that I noticed when I live in Digboy for much of the time that I'm in Assam every year, and because Digboy is a company town, they have people sweeping the leaves and piling the leaves and burning the piles of leaves. And really, those leaves are a very valuable source of the carbon that you need to have good quality compost. So I've got now, the staff have been trained. If we have a big pile of dried leaves during the winter months when the weather is dry, we will use that in our compost by taking a large drum, filling it with water and gobar, if we have access to the gobar, and just leave the leaves in that material for a while so that the dry leaves soak up the moisture, because that really helps them to cultivate the fungal materials that help break down the leaves. So if you keep the leaves moist, even during the winter, you can compost those, and they make a really, really good type of compost that's quite rich in high in fungal content. And fungus is very good for things like citrus trees, tea bushes. Not as you want to have a nitrogen rich compost material for vegetable crops, but for things like bushes and trees, it's better to have a material that's high in fungal content. So when you're making the compost pile, I'll go just back to say you've got all these layers of different materials, and you're alternating materials that are rich in nitrogen, like the green leaves, and high in carbon, one after the other. You moisten the pile with, if ideally, with a gobar solution. You can use a layer of gobar in the pile in between the two materials if you have access to cow manure. That's great. But the gobar will go further if you mix it with water. So once you've made the pile, you put a cover on top of it, and you can use banana leaves, you can use tocopat, you can use a plastic tarp, whatever you want to keep it, keep the moisture inside the pile, and also keep the rain out of it so that it doesn't get saturated, and to keep the sun out of it. And in the summer months in Assam, you can make compost really quickly, because in order for the decomposition process to take place, you need to have the pile heat up. So there are certain type of bacteria that will dominate in the first part of the decomposition process. They're called thermophilic bacteria. And when they are starting to multiply, they produce a huge amount of heat. So after you make your pile, if you get it covered, probably 10 days to 2 weeks after you've made your pile, if you uncover it and you put your hand down into that meter high pile of compost, you'll have to pull it out. It will be so hot. You'll see steam arising from the compost pile. And this is really good because what that's doing is it's helping to create a high enough temperature that it can actually kill off the weed seeds that might be present if you're decomposing weeds or plants where you don't want the seeds. And they can also kill off certain types of harmful bacteria that only withstand a certain temperature range. So you want that heating process to take place. Once the pile heats up and that decomposition is starting, then you can actually turn the pile over and let lots of air into it. And then if you want, you can put another layer of the gobar pani on top of it and then cover it up again. And within, I would say, at least no more than 2 months, you can have finished compost. The earthworms won't come into the compost pile until those thermophilic bacteria have done their work and the temperature of the pile has started to drop. But after that time, even if you don't introduce earthworms into the pile, they're generally present underneath the surface of the soil, and they'll start moving into the pile, and they do a great job of helping to digest that partially decomposed material that you want to actually break down into a very fine material. Vermicompost is a very popular item. It's fairly labor intensive, and in some ways, I think of it as a substitute for buying chemical fertilizer. It's something that people can just go and buy a bag of or a container of. The one thing that there are a few drawbacks with vermicompost. One is that it is fully decomposed material that the earthworms have eaten, and then they have digested it. So vermicompost is the castings, the gobar of the earthworms. So it's very, very powerful fertilizer, but it doesn't contribute anything to the organic. When I'm using the word organic here, what I mean is you really want to have a source of food for the bacteria and the fungus. Vermicompost doesn't have that. It's fully digested. So there's no fiber left from the leaves or from the grass or from the straw. It's been sieved, and it's again, it's a really good fertilizer, but it doesn't do anything to improve the fertility, the long-term fertility of the soil. Because what you want is to create something in your soil that draws the earthworms to it naturally. So you need to have some undigested, well, partially digested material in that compost. And that will help you to create an environment where earthworms and other bacteria and fungus and tiny microorganisms will populate, because that's the environment that they want to live in. They don't want to just live in dirt, and they don't really want to live in vermicompost. So the other disadvantage with vermicompost is that most people don't apply it properly. So when we make vermicompost at our training center, again in Digboy, we make long rows that are about 16 to 18 feet long, and we make it right on the ground. We don't have an expensive cement tank. We just make it on the ground, and we use partially decomposed compost, and we introduce the earthworms into that pile because it has the thermophilic bacteria have left. So it's not hot. When they are making the vermicompost, they sieve it and they remove all of the earthworms from it, and they put the earthworms into the new rows of partially decomposed compost.
Peggy, can I stop you for a minute? I
Yeah.
want to make sure that people are understanding what Peggy is saying, because Peggy is very passionate about it. She can continue going. I just woke her up in the morning and asked her to join. Otherwise, I'm sure that she could have shared her some videos or stuff like that, because sometimes it's difficult to imagine, what she's talking, Peggy, I didn't give you, sorry, I didn't give you enough time. But if you could also, what you are saying, also, if you could send me some link also, which I could share later on, it will be helpful because people will be able to imagine, see what you are saying. Am I correct? I want people to speak up. I want you to feel very comfortable. You may not understand quite a lot of things. Even for me, it goes above my head, some things when she is saying, So please be open. Ki tumak jodi aro kiba repeat koribo lagi ase, what she said you didn't understand. Yeah, jodi repeat koribo lagi ase kwa, you can speak up, you can write it, and we are here. Don't feel shy. If you didn't get it, please tell, because otherwise Peggy will go on. She's very passionate about this. I want to make sure that you are getting what she's saying. So please speak up. What are you getting, or should we ask her to continue? Please respond in the chat box. So should she continue, or do we have some question of what she already said?
Yes. Hi, Milan, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Good morning, Peggy. Nice to connect with you. Yep, hi. So I had a question or two, if I may. So about the composting that you do in your garden and all, what do you do about the slurry that sometimes comes out? And is there a way that you
weeds?
No, the slurry, the water parts.
Right.
Comes out.
When you say, what do you do with the slurry?
Yeah, and how do you extract that?
Oh, okay. I would take a small bucket of gobar, maybe one part of gobar to 10 parts of water.
Okay.
All right. So I would take a large container, put the gobar in the container, take a big stick, and mix it up. Simple as that. That's a very, very basic slurry. You can improve the variety of bacteria and of nutrients by adding to that slurry crushed leaves and different materials from around the garden, even things like fish waste. But if you use those products, you have to let the material decompose a bit further. So those, in Canada, we have a system, we call it Compost Tea. And sometimes people use plants that grow here that have nutrients in them. They crush the plants, they put it in with the gobar and with the water, and they stir it every day, but they may leave it for 3 days or 5 days or a week for it to start to decompose. In India, you have a very, very long tradition of farming practices called Vriksha Veda. And the formulas like Sasya Gavya and Panchagavya and Amrit Jal, all these are basically the same concept, but a little bit more rich and diverse in nutrients than just the slurry made with gobar and with water. Okay.
So so I was asking that, when sometimes we make the composting and we do, the composting and stuff. So what happens is, sometimes we put in a lot of, we generate more of the. Okay. Am I audible now?
You're on.
Okay. Cool. So what I was asking is basically when there's too much moisture in the compost, okay, and it's and we after a certain amount that amount of time that passes by, we generate a kind of lichet or the compost liquid which comes out, right? So I was asking, how do we extract that in a small home containment? When we
Are you making compost in a pit?
No. If we don't
You're
use a
making
pit,
it in a
other
pile.
than that, yeah, we don't have access to the ground. But if you use a certain cement pit or a cardboard, a thermocol box, for example,
Okay.
how do we extract that?
Okay. One of the things that is really important when you're making compost is that you don't have too much water in it. And typically people were making compost in a pit. And the problem with that is that there are certain types of bacteria called anaerobic bacteria that are present when you get too much water in your compost pile. So if you're making, are you using the thermo, forget what they're called, the boxes for the fish?
White ones, yes.
Then poke some holes in the bottom of it. Okay, so that if you've got extra moisture, it can come out. You could put a tray of some kind underneath that so that you can collect the moisture that's draining out of your compost pile. And then you can use that liquid to put directly onto your garden.
So Peggy, that liquid, is it called lichet? Lichet, right? Is it called the lichet? And that can be used as a fertilizer, also as a pesticide, right? Organic pesticide. That's what I heard from somebody. Is that correct?
Depends on it may work. If you're trying to control specific insect pests, then you tend to want to use specific plants that have characteristics that repel insects. But just to go back to your question, if you're using some kind of a tank, then just make sure that there's drainage holes in it so that you can, and then like if you were to visit Tenzing's tea garden, what you'd see there is that for instance, when he's collecting the gobar from the cows, he has actually made a cement floor in his cow shed that's on a bit of a slope. And at the perimeter of the cow shed, there's a drain. It's about, I'm trying to use my hand to illustrate. It's a drain. And at one end of the cow shed, there's actually it's made from cement, the floor, and the drain is made from cement. And then at the far end of the barn or the shed, there's actually a big square dug into the ground so that all that material that drains out of the urine and the water from the washing the floor, that can all be gathered up, and that can be used, again, it can be used directly as a fertilizer on your plants, or it can be used to moisten a compost pile, or it can be the basis of a formula like Millen was suggesting, where you might add certain types of plants, crushed up plants, and let those decompose slightly.
Use it as a bioenzyme or something like that. Mix good with.
The thing to think about around pest control is that chemical pesticides tend to be very non-specific, so they kill everything. Whereas if you look at the insect pests, what is the insect actually doing that's causing problems with the plant? So for instance, we had a serious problem in our garden where these tiny little ants were eating the roots of the brinjal, and I think they had also attacked the potato. And in the potato, they were eating little holes, and they were causing little black holes to form in the potato. But more seriously, in the brinjal, what we were seeing there were branches that would just collapse because there was a break in the circulatory system of the moisture going up the stem of the plant, because the stem was actually being eaten on the outside as well as the roots. So what we did, I did some research on how to control ants, particularly the ants that are in an environment like Assam. And what I found is that some ants are attracted to sweet, like to sugar, and some ants are attracted to protein. These particular ants, we tried two different traps. We put tinned fish, could use fish waste. The other one we used crushed banana. And these ants are looking for protein, and they're getting the protein by eating the roots and the stem of the plant. They're getting something out of that, not sweet, but something that has a protein, because they're hungry for that. And what we did, we took a container, a mud clay container that curd is often sold in. Okay, so it's a large container that curd is sold in the market. We took a nail and very carefully, we moistened the pot and very carefully made some holes just underneath where the lid or the top of the container, you know how it's usually, there's a shape to it. At the top, just under that lip around the perimeter of it, we put some holes. Then we put the fish waste in the bottom of the container. We dug a hole in the garden bed where the ants were causing this problem. And we put a lid on top of the container, and then just put leaves and some dirt on top of it. We left that container in the soil for 24 hours. And then we went over to it and removed the dirt from the top and took the lid off. The container was absolutely crawling with ants. All of the ants had smelled the fish, because they're starving. That's why they're eating our plants. They came from the whole bed inside and they were eating the fish. And what we did then was we removed the pot, we made a fire outside, and we burned the ants in that fire. So we were able, by doing that a couple of times, we were able to permanently get rid of the ants, which were seriously impacting our harvest of brinjal and potato. So you have to think strategically, and all this information is available online. You know, I'm not the only person that has it. And there's lots of videos that have been produced that feature Tenzing and Abhijit Das and other people who are making the formulas, that they'll share their experience too. And I will send that information to Milan to pass along to you. Yeah. Another technique, if you think about the surface of put my hand up here. If my hand is a leaf, and the insects are coming onto the surface of the leaf and they're eating holes in it. So they're using their mouthpiece to eat the holes in the leaf. So one really effective way of stopping insects from eating the leaves is to use a formula that's made from plants that things like chili or garlic. Also, there's a fern, it's called Dekia.
Oh, yeah. Yep. The Dekia. Yeah.
It's that green fern. If you rub it on your arm, it irritates your skin. And so the same thing happens for the mouthpiece of the insect. If you make a liquid formula with some cow urine, some cow gobar, some of the crushed plant, you have to crush these plants first before you use them, and then some water, strain it, and then you can spray it, or you can use just even like a brush, some grass, dried grass, dip it into a bucket, spray it on the plant. That material on the surface of the leaf is enough to repel the insect from bite, because when the insect bites into the leaf now, it's hot, it burns its mouth, and insects are really intelligent, so they move away, they go somewhere else. Some plant materials cause insects to get an upset stomach, so they might try eating the leaf and they eat this leaf concentrate that's in the leaf, makes them vomit, makes them throw up. So it can even make them stop eating and die. So a great thing that I love about learning about Vedic farming practices is that these were traditional practices that your ancestors used hundreds of years ago. But that knowledge almost disappeared.
Yeah, it's all disappeared and we don't know about it. We don't even, it's very upsetting at some point.
Yeah. So thanks to people, there's a guy in Dibrugarh, his name's Binod Saharia. And Binod brought a guy from South India who had studied Vedic practices into Assam in about 2002. And they practiced many, many, many different techniques. They used fish, they used some biodynamic practices, and they found ones that worked. And then Binod was very generous with his information, and he shared all this information with all the tea growers, with Tenzing, with all of the organic tea growers that I've worked with over the last 20 years now. So that was a way of inoculating the minds of a lot of people in Assam with that traditional knowledge.
That's actually very interesting. What I did was, actually I live in Vancouver, my home is here. You might know that the headquarters of SIP, the company for tea, is here. Like he is a close friend, the person of my friend or like my uncle. So I went to his tea garden once, and what I saw was there were patches of desertification. So what he did was he has been using all the chemical fertilizers, and he's turning to organic farming. He's trying to do so.
Great.
So yes, what I saw was that people don't want to use the organic farming or the practices because it's a very risky, for the production. So that's the main question they have.
Is his garden a really large garden?
It's a moderate. So actually, I'm being asked that there are many more people who'd like to ask a question. So what I'll do is I'll stop for now, Peggy, and then if somebody else has that, then we'll continue the conversation. Okay. Anybody else, please?
Others has question. Here, I think Kashmira had put, I do not know whether it's a question or not, but she said she's planning to plant agar tree. Kashmir, do you have a question? I don't know. See,
hello. Yeah, actually, I'm planning to plant some agar tree. I don't know whether this weather condition is not good for the agar tree or not. My soil structure is red soil structure, and I have heard that to grow agar trees, some insects should be there. So I just want to know how can I benefit from this tree or not.
I don't know the term. Is it AGAR? Agar tea?
Kashmir, do you know the English name of agar? What is agar in Assamese?
Agar, we generally use this term. I don't know actually I have to search. Okay, I will let you know after some time.
Okay.
I just Googled it. It says agar food tree.
It's a fruit tree.
Agar wood.
Agar is wood.
From this tree, they they produce perfume, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know the tree you mean. So you can make tea from it too. Or you're just growing it as a tree, not as a tea.
Hello.
He is going as a tree, not as a tea.
Okay. All right. You know, I don't know very much about that particular tree. I can give you the name of a botany teacher that I am good friends with who's in Duliajan. He's on Facebook, and he may be a better resource for me. Do other people have any knowledge about, are you what you're trying to do is, oh, that's great, Brianne, she read. Are other people aware of any ideas of how to improve that red clay soil that Kashmira is talking about?
Mm.
Compost is probably going to be one of your best options. But every tree, you know, I was mentioning earlier about using the leaves to produce a high fungal content compost. That would probably be a really good thing to work on for improving the soil in an area where you're trying to cultivate trees. Some trees, the roots don't want to be exposed to water, and some of them need water. So you need to know a little bit about the characteristic of the tree. And because it doesn't grow here in Canada, I'm not familiar with that.
So Peggy, you know, I had asked you this question before, and you might have already answered this question. So we have lots of bisa, you know, bisa, the furry caterpillars. We have lots of them. I don't know how to get rid of them.
What are they going after your cabbage
Or
crop,
just
or
leaves. I don't have cabbage. I just have lots of trees.
kind of
you know?
leaves? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think about the life cycle. Generally, if you can study an insect and you know a little bit about the life cycle, then you can get at the beginning of the season when the insects are first starting to lay the eggs are just starting. Generally, that's the best time to try and tackle controlling the insect pest. Sprays that can be used, again, using vegetable material or plant material that irritates the mouthpiece of the caterpillar can help. What I do when we have a fair number of insect pests, again, at the training center. We have a big demonstration garden. Manually removing the adult insects early on in the season, as soon as they're spotted, so that you're basically getting rid of all of the females. And that way you're dropping the number of insects that are the next generations. See, I guess, Millen, the question I have, I'm not sure what the type of a caterpillar it is. Is it going up into the leaves in a tree, or is it attacking the plants in a vegetable garden?
They're everywhere, you know, they're, you know, generally in the trees and in the leaves. The black color is quite often, you know, you see them quite often in Assam. You know, in Assam, they call it bisa, huh? So somewhere I read that you have to crush them. So I just, every time I go down, I just make sure that I crush, you know,
Absolutely.
10
That's
of
what
them,
I do.
because they, yeah, because many people, what I saw that it's when you crush them, the other people see that, other bisa see that, and they don't come to that area. That's what I heard. But we have so much of trees, it's difficult, you know. Even if I, you know, every time I go down there, I make sure that I kill 10 of them. I'm sure that the animal lover may hate me, but you know, I cannot, you know, I have to, it itches also. Like if it falls in you, it itches. And among us, there's Gayatri. There's a friend of mine who is really studying quite a lot about insect in this whole lockdown, and she posts every time. And I noticed she once put something in the group. So Gayatri, please chip in if you know anything about Bisa.
There are some types of, I think there's a type of bacteria It might be called, the initials for it are BT. And you can buy BT and you can use that in a spray.
That is used for mosquito also, right? The same thing for mosquito?
No, I don't think so. It's particularly useful for caterpillars.
Okay. Okay.
But it's fairly expensive.
Okay.
And when you've got a really big infestation, there is a technique that's kind of an interesting one. And, you know, when you, like I said, going back to the learning about the life cycle and the season when those caterpillars first start to show up, and going after them and squishing as many of them as you can. That's a really good technique. There is another technique that I forget which practice, it might be biodynamic, where what they do is they collect those insects in a container and then they burn the insects and then they use the ash and they spread the ash. I haven't read about this for a while. I'm not really 100% sure of the details, but they're basically, there's something in the ash that the insects recognize, and that makes them run in the opposite direction. It's a very, very powerful and very old technique. But even something as simple as squishing them and dropping them on the ground, you really need to make sure that you kill them, because a lot of times what I've seen is people picking the insects off and then throw them on the ground. Well, that's not going to do anything. They're just going to crawl back up again. So you have to squish them and get rid of them. I'll look up the name of that insect and see if I can.
Vishal Nath wrote, it's called hairy caterpillar.
Okay. I've got several techniques for insect control that are kind of interesting ones. I can give you one that's really effective for gourd, because there's a type of insect. I wish I had my slides available here, but I'll wait and see if there are any other questions or comments or thoughts that other people have. But I'll bring this one forward if there's no other response that you'd like me to offer. So I'll ask for comments from the group.
Yeah, hi Peggy, and good morning. This is Shomik. I am from Kolkata. So I have been very much, yeah, hi. So it's nice to have listening from you a lot about the organic farming on tea garden and all. So what is coming in mind is that most of the tea gardens, they are growing the teas in organic or non-organic. This is a different issue. But we often see that tea is growing in organic and in non-organic. Both are packing in the same way, like they are putting the teas in the plastic and all, which is very much not good for the global warming and all. So what is your opinion, how to pack up the teas in a most organic way?
That's a good question. The teas that I bring back from Assam, because I bring back a small amount, and I have a couple of shops that buy it here. What I use are paper bags that have a cellophane liner. Basically, you've got to have some way to keep the moisture and air away from the leaves, because what happens with tea leaves is that they, it's a really nice word. I can't remember what it is right now, but basically a tea leaf will attract the smells and absorb the smells from anything in the environment that it's in. So for instance, we had a problem one time where the tea had picked up the odor of some of the oil that they were using for lubricating the machine that the grower was using for crushing the leaves. So you have to be really careful to keep moisture and things like any airborne odors or gases that are in the air. So I can't say that I've done very much research into the type of bag of material that's available. I know that when we get the tea shipped from India to Canada, they're now using paper bags, and those paper bags have a foil liner on the inside of it. It doesn't get away with reducing all of the garbage that's produced, but the paper bags are lightweight. They keep the moisture out, and they also keep any kind of odor away from the leaves. So maybe looking at something like that. I mean, the paper bags I use are very inexpensive. They do a good job of stopping moisture and stopping the odors from coming in. And I do all my bagging manually. I don't have them printed up in a shop. I just print up paper labels that are on adhesive back, and I use that because I'm a small, my group is called the Small Tea Cooperative, and it is really small. I package my tea at my kitchen table, and I cut every label out by hand. It's very labor intensive, but it's a meditation. But Sami, going back to your question, are you thinking about the tea that is being sold in the shops, or are you thinking about where the tea growers, like the tea gardens, are packaging their tea in the warehouse and then shipping it? Which size bag?
So-
What's the use of the bag?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that if the tea is grown in such an organic way, which is very much good for the health and all, knowing everything very well, that tea organic growing is so much hard to grow the tea in an organic manner, because as we know very well that organic produce are always costly enough. So can you have some idea about if the tea can be packed in such a way that in Assam, I know I always go there, and there is a lot of bamboo is there, or we can pack the tea with the bamboo fiber or like that, so that it will be airtight situation, and there will be no use of plastic, so that it cannot pollute the water as well as the earth.
Yeah. Going back to the comment about the Singfo growers, traditionally that's how they used to store their tea. They dried the tea, and they actually put it in a bamboo, and the bamboo was stored in a rack above the fire where they were doing their cooking, and that dried it out. And also, I think the wood smoke, it created a slightly smoky flavor to the tea, but it preserved it for a long period of time. So we worked with Rajesh Singfo to make something similar to that. They were basically tea coins. So because in the tribal communities, they would just use a dao or something to slice this compressed hard tea into small pieces, and then they would brew it up into make their tea. With Rajesh, what we were doing was they were cutting with a hacksaw blade these small cylinder coins. So the tea was packed in a piece of bamboo that was about 12 inches long and maybe an inch and a half wide. But again, bamboo is a natural material, and so it absorbs moisture, and it's not as airtight. And if you try to put some kind of a varnish or some kind of a material on the outside of it to make it attractive and to protect the outside layer, you get off-gassing coming from the varnish. Because I know that bamboo water containers have become very popular, but I've also heard concerns that they're using materials for finishing the bamboo that actually are contaminating the water that's going into it. And how do you keep the bamboo container from getting mold or mildew on the inside? This is a big problem. In fact, the first shipment that Rajesh made of the bamboo tea, they they made the bamboo tubes, they dried them out, they put loose leaf tea in some of them, and the bamboo, they packed them in cellophane to protect them. And then the bamboo hadn't dried out 100%. And so there was mold and mildew that grew inside the package. So it's tough. It's tough to come up with a natural solution because nature doesn't make things that are permanent. Most of them are temporary. What I also have done is we made cloth bags. We have worked with a self-help group in Muliyabari, and the women used the pattern from the gamusa, which I just happen to have here. So a very small, simple pattern, maybe something, about that size. And they wove the fabric and then cut it into cloth bags. I don't have any here with me, I don't think. The bags were about 5 inches high and maybe 4 inches wide, and they had a drawstring in the top. But again, we had to put a small plastic bag on the inside of the cloth bag in order to protect the moisture. Now, the plastic bags, they can be used again and again for different things. If the kids have marbles, they could put the marble in the plastic bag. The gamusa bag, cloth bag, could be used for keeping jewelry in or for packing up something that you're giving to a friend, putting some cookies in. Cloth is a really nice container, and you still have to use some plastic, but if you use a plastic that doesn't have to be cut, it can just be, we had some little tin wire and we just twisted the plastic bag tight and then put it in the cloth bag with the drawstring, pulled it off the top. And it also is a way of celebrating the culture and the art of Assam. And we worked with some of our friends from the Bodo community, and they also made similar containers. Theirs were a little more sophisticated. They put a piece of bamboo on the bottom, and so that they actually stood up a little. They were bigger containers, but using fabric, and again, using fabric that is connected to the culture and the weaving of all the different communities in Assam is a really nice way to package the tea. So that's my best solution there for your question.
Peggy, there's a question from Purav. So Purav had a question saying that it is rainy and stormy. So he can't plant at this moment, but the problem is that his coconut tree just takes all the nutrition and protein from the soil, and it doesn't let the betel nut tree grow.
Mm. How far away from the coconut tree are the betel trees growing? What's the distance between the bushes, the plants?
I guess it's 2 feet. 2 feet or 2 feet, 4 feet. Yeah. Like there
Right.
are many betel nuts. Like I have planted around 10, but some like the distance like 10 foot they have grown, but the distance nearer didn't grow. Like I have planted them back like 6 months and they're still at the same height. Like they can't
Right.
grow. Like 2 of them or 3 of them can't grow, but the others they're like they have grown, but not to that extent.
Well, if you think about what's happening, the roots underneath the coconut tree are very big and well established, and they are sucking the nutrients out of the soil. So probably the only way that you can protect those small betel trees is to apply a liquid fertilizer on a regular basis until the root system gets developed enough. So you could try that. You could make like a little, use some mud or clay to make a, I can't show my fingers really.
Yeah.
Make a little dish around the outside of the plant.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so that the
I almost
moisture,
did that. Yeah. Yeah. I almost did that.
Yeah, something like that might work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But next time you'll know that you can't plant them in close proximity.
Yeah. I even thought of like digging them up and putting in the tub, but like it got broken with me, so I kept them over there itself.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You know what, Purab, there's a really interesting
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind when you say that. And
Yeah.
that is that, you know, we all studied in school photosynthesis,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
in your biology class.
Mm-mm.
And so we know the leaves, you know, they absorb the energy of the sun, and then the plant is able to manufacture sugar and protein, and the photosynthesis is responsible for giving energy to the plant. And that's true
Yeah.
to some extent. But one thing that I learned just, you know, a few years back was that plants don't just use the energy and the sugar that they generate through photosynthesis to feed themselves. They actually excrete into the soil through the tiny little root hairs. Somewhere, it depends on the plant, but somewhere around 25% of the energy that it manufactures, it actually puts into the ground. And it does that because the plants have a symbiotic relationship with other plants. There's this, they call it mycorrhiza, the tiny little root hairs and fungus that develop underneath the surface of the soil that we have no idea. It's so complex, and it's the plants communicate to one another through this system of tiny little threads of fungus that are in the soil that are connected to the roots of the plant. So there, when you talk about the big coconut tree, the coconut tree actually is able to read through the signals that it gets. It can actually tell if there's a plant, like say it's a small coconut bush or tree. It can actually, through its root system, it can divert energy over to that little plant that's way over there somewhere that's not getting enough food. Because they have this an intelligence that most people have no idea that plants can actually have. They don't have a brain, but they have intelligence. They're able to do all kinds of things. They can send signals to other plants that they've just been attacked by a certain type of insect, and those, some plants can actually put out smells that repel the insects that were attacking one of their similar plants just a few feet away. Some of them can actually change the shape of their flower so that the insect, which was feeding on the larva or feeding on the nectar of the plant, can no longer get to the nectar. The flower shape has changed. So now the insect goes away because it can't feed on the plant. There's a couple of videos that are available online, and I will post them on my Facebook page because they're amazing in terms of understanding how intelligent plants are, despite the fact that we think that we are superior beings, but actually they have a huge amount of intelligence. So, you know, even if you were to build that little moat around the Erica nut tree, it might be better to move them.
Actually, yeah.
So, can we have the recording of this session?
Did you record it?
It is in the Facebook, so you should be able to see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Anybody else has any more question? I'm sure that Suvankar has, but before Suvankar, anybody else has any more questions for Peggy? This is your chance. The expert, organic farming expert.
So it's not a question. It's just a my regards to you and Peggy for this wonderful session on organic farming, and we have got a lot of knowledge on how the things can be grown in a more organic way, which is the recent need of the time. And it is really a wonderful session, really wonderful session. And thanks to the organizers and thanks to Peggy for this wonderful session. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Peggy is savior because we had Tenzin Borosa as a speaker today, and maybe they have some bad internet or something for which he could not join. I did not hear from him. So Peggy, she lives in Canada. It's too early morning, maybe at 4:30 or something like that.
Oh, no, actually it's 11:05 p.m.
Oh, sorry, PM. All right, yeah. Yes,
You're thinking of Minneapolis
Yes.
connection.
I was all Minneapolis and everything is getting things. So Peggy just joined, so that is great to save us. And Peggy had another session before too. She had talked about her journey to Assam and how she get involved with Assam. So, and I really appreciate Peggy for doing so because, and one of the reasons when we are bringing all this, because we want more and more entrepreneurs, specifically those who are from Northeast region. We want, whether you want to do organic farming or whether you want to get involved with, solid management, waste management or whatever it may be. We like to hear whatever you want, information. We'll try to get somebody. So next week there will be this person called Manas Salia. He is doing fish farm and taking back or claiming the fish market. So which is, because Assamese people are not in the fish market, so now they are claiming that, which is a good initiative. So that's going to happen next week. So I know it is late for Peggy. I know Suvankar had some questions. Suvankar, why don't you ask before we end the session? If anybody else, any questions, please add it. But Suvankar, I know that you had some questions.
Yeah. Hi, Peggy. Just one single question before we break. Where do you think that this present community of tree growers is going? Because there's a big leap that one must cross from organic farming, from the use of chemicals. So, do you think that people are open enough for those initial losses that their production might have while they are wanting to shift to the organic farming?
That's a really good question. I think that there is an assumption that there's going to be a significant loss because of the changeover. But generally, I think that happens because people haven't had access to the information that they need to prepare before they make the shift away from using chemical inputs. The art of taking care of the soil and understanding what's actually going on in the soil so that you can make good decisions about the techniques that you're using and that you have compost prepared and that you have a range of different formulas that you are familiar with and that you and perhaps your staff or workers or family members have. If people prepare ahead of time and if they do their homework, there shouldn't be a significant loss in the crop. But that's also another variable is that the size of the garden area that people are changing. If it's a small, 3 biga area, it's not such a big issue. If it's, 100 acre or 50 hectare farm or small garden or big garden, that's a much different scenario. So organic tends to work better and is more adaptable and more easy to accomplish if the scale is not too large. So what we're seeing in Canada now is that the organic farming sector tends to be family farms, not really big operations. And they are people who, the successful organic farmers here are people who have really studied and they've really learned what it is that is going on. They network with other farmers. They sometimes will go and spend time volunteering or working with an organic farmer so that they can really understand where the, what has to happen. It's so the scale of operation and also preparing are the two things that can actually really help produce or reduce the loss of crop production. And I think that the market for organic growing is continuing to increase because people are more and more aware that there's a lot of hazards to us, but also to the environment. And another area that's really important too is the preservation of the seeds and the varieties of rice and of vegetable crops that come from your area that are suited to the local growing conditions. If we start bringing in, I know that people in Assam now are growing broccoli and cabbage and a lot of different crops. Those are not traditional to Assam culture or the environment. And so sometimes it's hard to get the good quality seeds, where people are purchasing hybrid seeds, and hybrid seeds you can't save. You lose the characteristics from the mother plant. So the organic, and I'm not an expert, despite Millen's kind words, I'm not an expert. I'm somebody who's passionate about making compost. I have an organic garden myself for 35 years, but the people that I know who are doing really well at organic farming are trying to keep the scale down. They're trying to be as independent as they can. They're not relying on expensive equipment. They're not buying inputs. Most of them are not buying inputs. They're producing their own fertilizers. And they're really approaching it very strategically. And we're also really lucky that now that we have a fairly strong network of experienced organic growers, whereas in Assam, it's a new sector. And sometimes I find people are reluctant to share some of the knowledge that they have. Like I said, there's a lot of good videos and things that are online right now. So people should have access to that and share and go and visit and talk and build a network. I got a whole bunch of websites that I've set up online that I'm not doing a great job of maintaining right now, but the intent was to try and have a forum and have a network so that people could share information. Like I can share the links to the videos. I can share handouts that I have that are in English and in Assamese.
Yep.
But there are lots of other things that are going on that should be on there too. And we have a Farmers Institute in the area that I live in. It's very active. And right now, because of the CODEV scenario, the number of people who are sharing, like they're starting plants, they're sharing them with other people, they're sharing knowledge, they're going and visiting other farms. There's a revolution going on here in our local food production sector. It's amazing. And our government has stepped forward and has offered subsidies for people who want to work in agriculture. They're providing training in sustainable agriculture at several universities and colleges now. So it's really, really changing because Canada is very, very dependent on imported products that are coming in from California, Mexico, India. Some of those crops we can't grow here. Some we can just get a lot cheaper from bringing them in. But that system is broken right now. So we have to get our shit together and start producing more food. And we need to make agriculture financially viable for younger people like you guys to get serious about. And I know that there are efforts underway in Assam right now. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the work that Samir Bordaloy is doing, but Samir is from Jorhat and he's on Facebook. He's doing some really, really neat stuff. He's working out of near Guwahati. He has a farm. I can't think of the name of the place, but look him up on Facebook, Samir Bordaloy. There's videos, a really awesome video on YouTube called Revolution. And Yeah, he is for me one of the real movers and the shakers. Another really good guy to connect with is Neelam Dutta. And Neelam is operating a farm near Biswanath, Charlie, in a village called Paboy. And he's on Facebook, and he does a lot of training, and he is really welcoming to people. You can go and help out at his farm for a week and learn a lot. And he, great opportunity. So I know more of the local heroes in Assam than most people do. And I need to do a better job of trying to help you guys network with some of the people there. Because I got so many great friends who are, they're all sharing. They're all really interested in moving things ahead. Darren Foucan is a small tea grower whose garden is not too far from Dibrugarh. And he welcomes people with open arms. And he's got so much knowledge about plants and formulas and really willing to share. So you can bring in somebody from Canada once in a while, but I really want you to connect with the people on the ground there. And I hope I'll get back and be able to connect with some of you in person too.
So Peggy, see, we listened to you. We invited Mohan, we invited Tenzing, but quite often sometime, it Assam and, Tenzing didn't show up. So you are being Canadian. I know that, you will be reliable. But that's one problem we have over here about accountability and reliability sometimes. I do not exactly know what happened with Tenzing today, but, sometimes we have that problem because they are farmers and they, maybe busy, whatever happened. So, so you are always our backup. I know that at late night you cannot go anywhere, so we reach out to Peggy. So, and since we have invited you a couple of times and people are more familiar with you and feel comfortable to asking questions. So, thank you for joining. I know that it's getting late over there, and people got your Facebook page and your information. And again, in the future, we are planning to invite Samir Bordaloy and Neelam Gupta. We are going to do that. And if they do not show up, then I'm going to ping you up. So you will, whenever I will have some farmers from Assam, we will have backup as Peggy if she doesn't join us. So if nobody had any more question, we will end this session for now, for today. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Peggy, for backing up, and show up in the last moment. I didn't wanted to, stop this session. So thank you. Anything else? Priyanshu, you're saying something?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
So Peggy said, let me know we connect on this program if you send it face. Okay.
Yeah, I get a lot of friend requests, and I won't remember because I didn't write down your names tonight. So if you just send me a Facebook request, I might not friend you because I have too many friends on Facebook already. But if you send me a message and say, hi, I'm one of the people that took part in that program and I want to connect, then I'll connect with you for sure. But you can contact me by my email address too. That works.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Peggy, for joining. All right. Thank everybody. Have a great day here. And Peggy, hope you will have a sound sleep.
Good sleep. I will.
All right.
Okay. Nice to connect with you guys. Thanks, Millen.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay. Bye.